The suns were merciless today. Two great burning orbs hung high in the pale yellow sky, pouring down waves of heat that made the horizon shimmer like boiling water. Eric could feel the sting on his skin, even through the thin fabric of his desert jacket. His mouth was dry, his tongue heavy like sand, and the sound of his own breathing echoed inside his helmet. He had been walking for hours. The rocky dunes stretched endlessly in every direction. Somewhere behind him was the crash site of his small ship, now buried in drifting sands. In front of him, moaned the unknown. Scanner was dead, his water pack was nearly empty, and the map in his head was a wild guess. He had only one choice: keep moving or become another bleached skeleton in the desert. Eric found a low rock outcrop that offered a little shade. His legs ached, his shoulders burned under the weight of his pack. He dropped it with a grunt, leaning against the stone. The heat was exhausting, but another problem had been bothering him for hours: pressure in his bladder. He glanced around. The desert was empty. No movement, no life, no sound except the low whisper of hot wind, loosening the boulder, loosening the front seals of his suit. As the relief came, his eyes closed for a moment, letting himself forget the danger. Then why are you wasting water? The shout was sharp and high-pitched, echoing off the rocks like a whip crack. Eric jumped so hard that he almost fell. Forward, his hand instinctively went to his sidearm, but he froze. A figure was standing a few meters away, a slim girl, alien, young, but not a child. Her skin had a faint bronze tone under the dust, her large eyes a bright gold that seemed to burn even in the shadow. She wore loose, tattered layers of cloth, tied with strips of leather, and a long scarf wrapped around her head. In her hands was a spear made of polished bone, the tip sharp and gleaming. Her expression was a mix of shock and anger, as if she had caught him committing some terrible crime. "Excuse me?" Eric asked, his voice dry and hoarse. She took a step forward, pointing the spear not at him, but at the ground where the sand was darkening. "Water. You are spilling water." Eric blinked. This isn't. He stopped. The truth of what he was doing didn't matter here. On her world, she clearly saw it as waste. "I didn't think you didn't think," she repeated, her voice sharp with judgment. "Every drop is life here. Every drop feeds the sand." Eric straightened, closing the seals of his suit again. "Look, I'm not from here. I didn't mean to." She wasn't listening.
Oh.
In 2 quick steps, she was close enough that the tip of her spear touched the front of his chest plate. She stared at him with an intensity that made him shift his weight. "If you have water," she said slowly, "you must give it to the desert people. The desert remembers those who waste." Something in her tone sent a small chill through him, even in this unbearable heat. It wasn't just about rules. It sounded like superstition. Or maybe a warning. Eric lifted his canteen from the side of his pack. "This is all I've got left," he said. The girl's eyes widened. She snatched it from his hand before he could stop her, uncapping it and smelling the contents. Her shoulders relaxed, but only slightly. "You will follow me," she said simply. "If you stay here, the sand will take you." "Who are you?" Eric asked, but she was already walking away, her scarf fluttering in the hot breeze. He sighed, slung his pack over his shoulder, and followed. The girl moved quickly, her steps confident on the shifting sand. Eric had to push himself to keep up. As they walked, he noticed how she scanned the land around them, her head tilting at every faint noise. Once, she froze, raising her hand for him to stop. They waited in silence until she moved again. After some time, they entered a narrow canyon between 2 jagged ridges. Here, the heat felt less crushing, shadows stretching across the stone walls. The girl finally spoke without looking back. "My name is Lyra. You are not from the desert. You smell different.
Oh.
You walk like the ground might break under you." Gave a small laugh. "I'm not used to sand trying to cook me alive." She glanced over her shoulder, her golden eyes unreadable. "The desert doesn't cook you," she said softly. "It drinks you." Before he could ask what she meant, they reached a cliff face covered in strange carvings, spirals, symbols, and lines that looked almost like flowing water. At the base of the cliff was a narrow crack just wide enough for a person to pass through. Sideways, Lyra slipped inside, motioning for him to follow. Eric hesitated, glancing back at the canyon. He felt like eyes were watching them, though he saw nothing. Taking a deep breath, he squeezed into the crack. On the other side, the air was cooler, damp even. His eyes adjusted to the dim light, and his breath caught. Before him was a small pool of clear water, surrounded by moss and glowing fungi that cast a faint blue light. Drops fell from a thin crack in the rock above, each one landing with a gentle ripple. Lyra crouched beside the pool, touching the surface lightly with her fingers. This is the life of my people. We guard it. We fight. For it we die for it. She looked up at him. If you truly wish to live, you must understand what you almost threw away. Eric stepped forward, kneeling beside her. The water's surface shimmered strangely, like it held more than a reflection. For the first time since the crash, he felt something other than fear. He felt curiosity. But deep inside, he also felt the weight of her warning, and the sense that this was only the beginning of something much larger. The small pool of water lay still, its surface shining faintly in the soft blue glow from the moss. Eric crouched beside it, staring as if it might disappear if he blinked. He had seen water before, of course, but never in a place like this. Not in the middle of a world that felt like it wanted to burn him alive. Lyra sat on the other side of the pool, her legs crossed, her spear lying beside her. She watched him carefully, her golden eyes bright in the dim light. "Do you feel it?" she asked. "Feel what?" Eric replied. She pointed at the water. "It is not just water. It is alive." Eric frowned. "Looks like water to me." He reached out a hand toward the surface, but Lyra's voice snapped like a whip. "Don't touch it yet." He froze. "Why not?" Her gaze turned serious, her voice lower now. "Only the deserving touch this water. The well decides if you are worthy, if you are not." She let the sentence trail off and glanced toward the shadows in the far corner of the cave. Eric followed her eyes. At first he saw nothing, just dark rock and more glowing moss. But then his stomach tightened. Half hidden under a slab of stone lay a shape, a skull, not human, long jaws, sharp teeth, and smooth, dry bone. He looked back at Lyra. "What happened to them?" "They tried to take what wasn't theirs," she said simply. "The well does not forgive." A sudden drop of water fell from the crack above, landing with a faint plink. The sound echoed strangely, almost like a whisper. Eric shook his head. "So this is your well? It doesn't look deep." Lyra's lips curved into a faint smile that wasn't friendly. "It's not the depth you see. The well runs below. The desert. Its veins touch places no one dares to go. It has its own memory." Her words made the small hairs on the back of his neck stand up. "All right, then. Why bring me here?" She picked up her spear and tapped the shaft lightly against the stone floor. "Because you are now part of it. You wasted water in the open desert. The well must see if you will repay your debt." Eric opened his mouth to argue, but stopped. She wasn't joking. He had no idea what she meant by part of it, but his gut told him refusing would be a bad idea. "And how exactly do I repay this debt?" "You will drink from the well," Lyra said. "If it accepts you, you will serve. If it rejects you." She glanced again at the skull in the shadows. Eric rubbed his jaw. "You're making this sound like a death sentence." Her eyes didn't blink. "It is life or death. There is no middle." Before he could respond, a faint sound reached his ears movement. The scraping of stone. He turned his head toward the crack they had entered through. Figures were moving there. They stepped into the blue glow one by one, tall, lean aliens dressed in layered bone armor, their faces painted with streaks of red and black. Each carried a curved blade that seemed too large for comfort. Their eyes fixed on Eric instantly, and their leader, a broad-shouldered warrior with a jagged scar down his cheek, spoke in a language Eric couldn't understand. Lyra stood and answered sharply in the same tongue. Her tone was firm, almost challenging. The warrior growled something back, his gaze never leaving Eric. "What's going on?" Eric asked, standing slowly. "They are the guardians of the well," Lyra said without turning. "They want to know." Why I brought an outsider here. I told them you were my water brother. It means the well must judge you, she said quickly, then to the warriors. Bring it. Two of them stepped forward, carrying a small carved bowl made of dark stone. They knelt beside the pool, dipping it in carefully until it was full. Then they stood and held it out toward Eric. The water inside shimmered strangely, almost silver. Under the moss light, it looked clean, but something about it made his throat tighten. Drink, Lyra said softly. Eric looked from the bowl to her. And if I don't? Her voice was quiet, but her words were cold. Then you will not leave this place alive. The warrior's eyes were unblinking. Eric's hand trembled slightly as he reached for the bowl. He lifted it to his lips and took a slow sip. The taste was unlike anything he had ever known, cold and sweet, but with a strange heat that spread instantly through his chest. His heartbeat quickened, his vision sharpening as if the dim cave had suddenly grown brighter. The blue glow of the moss seemed to pulse, and for a moment he swore he could see faint ripples of light moving under the surface of the pool. Like veins, he set the bowl down, breathing hard. What was that? Lyra studied him for a moment, then nodded once. The well has marked you. You belong to it now. Eric felt a rush of questions in his mind, but before he could speak, the leader of the warriors barked an order. The group moved toward the crack, leaving only Lyra and Eric behind. She stepped closer. You are not safe anymore. The water in you will call to others, those who wish to protect it, and those who wish to take it. Eric frowned. You mean, there are others out there who will come for me? Yes, Lyra said, tightening her grip on her spear. And they will not all look like friends. Somewhere far above in the sun-baked desert, a deep rumble rolled through the ground. Eric glanced toward the cave wall, feeling the vibration in his boots. Lyra's golden eyes locked on his. We have to move. Now. The rumble faded, but the cave still seemed to breathe around them, slow, heavy, almost alive. Out. Eric's heart was still racing from the strange drink. The heat inside his chest had not gone away. Instead, it pulsed in time with his heartbeat. His fingers tingled. His vision was too sharp, and every drop of sound seemed louder than it should be. Lyra moved quickly toward the narrow crack in the cliff wall. Stay close, she ordered. The trial has already begun. Eric followed, his boots crunching on the damp stone. What trial? I drank the water, doesn't that mean I passed? She didn't slow down. No, drinking only binds you to the well. Now you must prove you can protect it. As they stepped out of the crack into the canyon, Eric was nearly blinded by the twin sun's glare. The heat slammed into him like a wall. The alien warriors were gone. Only their footprints in the sand showed they had been there at all. Lyra led him deeper into the canyon until they reached a narrow choke point, where two jagged cliffs leaned toward each other, leaving only a thin path. She stopped and turned. To him, this is where the trial is held, she said. The well's guardians will send you a challenge. If you survive, you are accepted. If you fail, let me guess, Eric said dryly. More bones for the desert. She didn't smile. Stay alert. For a long moment, nothing happened. The wind whispered through the rocks, carrying the faint scent of dry dust. Eric's skin prickled. His instincts, sharpened by years of off-world travel and survival work, told him danger was near. Then dash movement. From the shadows between the cliffs, shapes emerged. At first Eric thought they were more warriors, but as they stepped into the light, he realized these were different. Their armor was heavier, made of thick, overlapping plates of bone. Their eyes glowed faintly blue, and they carried long, wicked-looking hooks instead of blades. They moved slowly, deliberately, surrounding him. One of them spoke in a deep, resonant voice. Outsider, the water runs in your blood. You must prove you are not a thief. And how do I do that? Eric asked. Keeping his voice calm even as his hand hovered near his sidearm, the warrior pointed toward a gap in the canyon wall. Inside waits the guardian of the trial. Defeat it, and you live. Lyra stepped closer to Eric, her voice low. Be careful. I do not send you against something you can win easily. They want to see if you will run or fight. 8. Eric muttered. And what happens if I decide I don't like either option? She didn't answer. With no choice, Eric stepped through the gap. The air inside was cooler, but heavy, with a strange metallic smell. The narrow passage opened into a circular chamber of stone, lit by shafts of sunlight streaming through cracks above. At the center of the chamber was a pool. It's much smaller than the hidden well, but its water glowed faintly blue, just like the warrior's eyes. Eric stepped closer, but then the water shifted, rippling outward in a slow spiral. Something was rising. A shape broke the surface ahead. Long and narrow, covered in pale, smooth scales. 2 black eyes, fixed on Eric, and a mouth full of needle-like teeth, opened in a silent hiss. The creature's body uncoiled, revealing it to be a massive serpent, its length disappearing into the water. Eric took a step back, his hand finally drawing his sidearm. You've got to be kidding me. The serpent lunged without warning, its head whipping forward with terrifying speed. Eric threw himself to the side, hitting the ground hard as the creature's jaws slammed shut where he had been standing. From the gap in the wall, the armored warriors watched silently. Lyra's face appeared for an instant. Her eyes were intense, but she said nothing. The serpent circled in the water, then surged toward him again. This time Eric fired, the energy bolt, striking the creature's snout. It hissed and pulled back, but the blast seemed to only anger it. He realized something: the trial wasn't just about killing it. The warriors wanted to see if he could endure, to face something stronger, faster, and still stand. The serpent struck again, and Eric rolled, snatching up a jagged rock from the ground. As it lunged, he jammed the rock into the side of its open mouth, wedging it against its teeth. The creature thrashed violently, its body slamming into the stone walls, sending dust and pebbles raining down. Eric seized the moment, sprinting forward. He jumped onto the serpent's coiled body, running up toward its head. With his sidearm pressed against the top of its skull, he fired point blank. The beast shuddered, gave a final hiss, and collapsed into the water with a heavy splash. The pool went still again. The only sound was Eric's ragged breathing. From the gap, the deep voice of the lead warrior spoke. The trial is complete. The well accepts you. Eric stepped back onto the dry stone, his boots leaving wet prints. Lyra was there, her expression unreadable. You fought well, she said quietly. But now you are bound to the water in more ways than you understand. What's that supposed to mean? Eric asked. She glanced toward the canyon beyond. The water in you will call 2 things in the desert. Not all of them will wait for trials. A faint vibration passed through the ground again, stronger this time. Eric felt it in his bones. Lyra tightened her grip on her spear. We need to leave. The trial was only the beginning. The canyon felt different now. The air was hotter, heavier, and Eric noticed that even the shadows seemed to waver unnaturally. The faint vibrations in the ground hadn't stopped since they left the trial chamber. They were slow, steady, like the heartbeat of something huge moving beneath the sand. Lyra walked ahead with long, quick steps, her scarf whipping in the dry wind. She didn't speak for a while, as if she was listening for something Eric couldn't hear. Finally, she said, You've been marked, not just by the well, but by the desert itself. Eric adjusted the strap of his pack. You keep saying that like it's supposed to mean something. What's out there? Why does it feel like the ground's breathing? She slowed her pace slightly, looking back at him. The thirst hunters, she said. The name alone sent a chill down his spine. Sounds friendly, he muttered. They are not friendly. They are ancient, older than the tribes, older than the cities that crumbled before my people were born. They live beneath the sands, moving with the water veins under the desert. They can smell a drop of moisture from a mile away. And now that I drank from your magic, well, Eric began. You carry the purest water in the desert inside you, Lyra finished for him. To them, you are a beacon, let out a low breath. Great, so I'm basically a walking dinner bell. She gave a small nod, not denying it. And the rival tribes know it. They will use the hunters to track you. If they catch you, They will bleed you dry and leave the hunters to fight over your body. Eric didn't like the way she said it, not as a warning, but as if it was simply the way things were. He scanned the canyon walls, feeling exposed. So what's the plan? Keep running until I'm not glowing in their senses anymore. Lyra stopped so suddenly that Eric almost bumped into her, crouched low, pressing her palm to the sand. Her golden eyes narrowed. They're close. Eric knelt beside her. How close? She didn't answer right away, and she whispered, too close. The ground shifted beneath them, not an earthquake, but something moving fast below the surface. Sand began to pour into small depressions, as if being sucked from underneath. Lyra rose to her feet, spear in hand. We run now. They bolted through the canyon, the twin suns glaring down on them. The vibrations grew stronger, following their path like the shadow of a predator. Eric glanced back and saw the sand heaving, a long ridge forming and moving just behind them. Something broke the surface, a jagged chitinous fin, black and glistening in the sunlight, cutting through the sand like the dorsal blade of a massive shark. Then another. Tell me those aren't what I think they are, Eric shouted. They're scouting us, Lyra yelled back. The hunters always send smaller ones first. Smaller ones. The fin vanished, replaced by a sudden explosion of sand. A creature burst from the ground, long and segmented, its armored body glistening like polished stone. Its head was wide, with a circular mouth lined with layers of teeth that rotated slowly. Grinding against each other, Eric didn't even think. He raised his sidearm and fired. The bolt struck the creature's armor and scattered sparks, but the beast barely flinched. They don't die that way, Lyra shouted. Aim for the eyes if you can find them. The creature slammed its body down, the impact shaking the ground so hard Eric stumbled. Another fin appeared ahead of them, cutting off their path. Lyra didn't slow. She darted to the side, leading them toward a narrow split in the canyon wall. Eric followed, the sand swirling behind them as the creature dove underground again. They squeezed into the gap just as the ground outside erupted, the hunter smashing into the stone walls in frustration. Eric felt the rock shudder beside him. Inside the narrow passage, the light dimmed. The air was cooler here, but filled with dust. Lyra finally stopped, leaning against the wall to catch her breath. They'll circle us now, try to trap us between them. Eric holstered his weapon and looked at her. You've fought these things before? Once, she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes told a different story. We lost 12 warriors that day, and it was only one hunter. Eric felt a drop of sweat slide down his temple. He wiped it away, then remembered her first words to him. Every drop is life here. The idea that the creature might have smelled that drop made his stomach twist. Then what's our play? He asked. She pushed away from the wall, gripping her spear tighter. We use what the desert gives us, and we make them thirsty for the wrong thing. Before he could ask what she meant, a deep, resonant roar shook the air. Sand poured in too, the passage from above as the hunter began to dig downward toward them. Lyra's eyes locked on Eric. You wanted to understand the desert? This is your lesson. Don't let it drink you. The roar faded into a low grinding rumble as the thirst hunter burrowed deeper, circling them beneath the sand.
Oh.
The vibrations came from all sides now, bouncing off the canyon walls like the beat of some enormous heart. Eric gripped the rough stone beside him, his pulse quickening. It's not leaving, is it? Lyra shook her head slowly. No, it's learning you. He frowned. Learning me? They can taste the water in the air, she said, her golden eyes fixed on the ground. They know the shape of a body from the heat it gives off. They know how fast your blood flows, how much water you've lost since you started running. It's not just hunting you, it's measuring you. The idea made Eric's stomach tighten. He had faced dangerous creatures before, fangs, claws, venom, but nothing that could study him like this. And once it's done measuring, we'll strike in the exact way you cannot defend, she said simply. He swallowed hard. Great, so what's the plan? Lyra knelt and brushed her fingers across the sand. Her hand came away damp. Eric's eyes widened. There's water under here. She nodded. The desert isn't just sand and rock. It has veins deep below. The hunters follow them. Without those veins, they would die. But the water down there isn't like what you drank from the well. It's older, and it remembers. Eric crouched beside her. Remembers what? She glanced at him, her expression unreadable. Everything that dies in it. Everything that bleeds into it. The water holds those memories like bones in a graveyard. The words sent a chill crawling up his spine. He looked at the damp sand. Again, wondering what Torhu might be drifting in those unseen rivers far below their feet. "You've been down there?" he asked quietly, her jaw tightened. "Once, when I was a child, my brother and I, we fell through a sinkhole. The hunters were already there, pushed me to a ledge. I never saw him again." Eric didn't know what to say. He wanted to offer some comfort, but Lyra's tone wasn't soft. There was no grief in her voice anymore, only a hard, cold certainty. The vibrations grew stronger, snapping him back to the present. Dust sifted down from the canyon walls. The hunter was closing in. Lyra stood. "We can't outrun it, not here. We need to make the desert choose us over the hunter." Eric blinked. "I thought the hunter was the desert." Her lips curled into the faintest hint of a smile. "Not exactly. The desert is older than the hunters. It has its own rules, and those are..." She lifted her spear and pointed toward a jagged gap in the canyon wall. "Follow me, and you'll see." They squeezed through the gap, emerging into a wide, bowl-shaped depression in the sand. The ground here was darker, almost black, and Eric's boots sank with every step. It felt damp, heavy, wrong. "What is this place?" He asked. "A drinking pit," Lyra said. "The tribes come here to offer the desert water. In return for safety..." Eric stopped in his tracks. "White, you mean a sacrifice?" Her eyes flicked toward him in a way. "We spill water here, so the desert feeds on it instead of us." As if on cue, the sand in the center of the pit shifted, swirling slowly. Eric took a step back, his hand on his sidearm. Lyra, I don't think the desert is in the mood for gifts right now." The swirling grew faster, and the rumble beneath their feet deepened. A faint, strange smell filled the air, a mix of wet stone and something metallic. Lyra didn't move. She stabbed the butt of her spear into the ground and shouted something in her own language, her voice echoing off the canyon walls. The swirling stopped. For a moment, there was silence. Then, without warning, the thirst hunter erupted from the sand. This close, it was enormous, its body the width of a hover truck, its segmented armor gleaming like polished obsidian. The circular mouth opened wide, teeth grinding against each other with a sound like broken glass. Eric raised his weapon, but Lyra held out her hand. "Not yet." The hunter hissed, its head weaving from side to side, as if trying to decide who to take first. Lyra reached into the pouch at her waist and pulled out a small vial of water, clear, shimmering like the sacred well. She tossed it into the center of the pit. The vial shattered and the water soaked into the black sand instantly. The effect was immediate. Sand beneath the hunter began to sink, dragging it downward. The creature roared, thrashing violently, but the more it struggled, the faster it sank. "What's happening?" Eric shouted over the noise. "The desert has chosen," Lyra called back. "It will take the hunter instead of us." Within seconds, only the top of the creature's head was visible. Then, with a final hiss, it vanished completely beneath the black sand. The ground stilled and the vibration stopped. Eric stared at the spot where it had disappeared. "That's it? It's gone?" "For now," Lyra said, retrieving her spear. "But the desert never forgets, and neither do the hunters. More will come." Eric let out a long breath, his muscles finally relaxing. "You could have just told me you had that trick instead of letting me think we were about to die." Her eyes softened slightly. "If you were to survive here, you must learn what the desert can do on, what it demands in return. Today it took the hunter. Tomorrow, it might take you." As they climbed out of the pit, Eric glanced back one last time. The sand was perfectly smooth now, as if nothing had happened. But deep inside he knew the truth. Something was still down there, watching, waiting, and he had a feeling it wouldn't wait long. The wind picked up as they left the black pit behind, carrying with it a faint howl that didn't belong to the air. It was deeper, heavier like the growl of some distant beast. Eric glanced at Lyra. "Please tell me that's just the wind." Scarf whipped around her face as she shook her head. "No, the desert is calling its children." He slowed his steps. "The hunters," she said grimly. "All of them." Eric's gut tightened. "How many is all?" Lyra didn't answer, which told him more than words could. She was scanning the horizon, her golden eyes darting left and right, as if calculating escape routes that didn't exist. The sun was lower now, the heat less direct, but the ground under Eric's boots was warmer than before. Too warm. The vibrations had returned, faint at first, then stronger, till it felt like they were walking on the skin of something enormous. Then ahead of them, the sand moved. Not just in one place, everywhere. Ridges formed in the distance, long and curved, racing toward them from all sides. Eric's breath caught. "That's..." "Storm of teeth," Lyra said, her voice barely above a whisper. It was the first time he had seen fear in her eyes. From the ridges, more and more fins erupted, black, glistening, each slicing through the sand with terrifying speed. They were converging, closing the space around them like a tightening noose. "They're hurting us." Eric realized aloud. "Yes," Lyra replied. "Into the open." "But why?" he asked, already knowing he wouldn't like the answer. "So they can strike from below without hitting each other," she said. "It will be quick." Eric glanced at the jagged canyon walls around them. "We need higher ground." "There is none," she said flatly. "Only the desert." He clenched his jaw. "Then we make our own ground." She shot him a look. "What are you thinking?" He dropped his pack and began digging through it. "I've got 3 high-yield thermal charges left from the crash. If I can set them deep enough, maybe we can give them a reason to stay under." Lyra shook her head sharply. "No, they will sense the heat, and it will only make them hungrier." Eric hesitated. "So explosives won't kill them?" "Nothing kills them," she said, "unless the desert chooses it." The fins drew closer, their speed increasing. Sand sprayed into the air as massive bodies passed just beneath the surface. Then the first one struck. The ground ahead erupted as a hunter burst upward, its circular mouth spinning with a sound like grinding metal. It lunged at Eric, but Lyra shoved him aside and drove her spear into the soft flesh between its armored plates. The creature hissed, twisting violently before diving back under, before Eric could thank her. 2 more hunters breached the sand behind them. The air was filled with the hiss of their teeth and the pounding vibrations of their bodies slamming into the ground. "Move," Lyra shouted, grabbing his arm and pulling him toward a cluster of jagged boulders. The rocks were barely waist high, but they gave some cover. Eric crouched behind them, firing bursts at the hunters as they circled. The blasts glanced off their armor, leaving only scorch marks. "This isn't working," he yelled. "It's not meant to," Lyra called back. "We are only surviving until a deafening roar cut her off. From the horizon, the sand rose in a massive wave. No, not sand. A single hunter, larger than all the others combined, was pushing toward them, its body stretching so far that Eric couldn't see its tail. Lyra's face went pale. The matriarch. Eric's stomach dropped. "The what now?" She commands the swarm. "If she is here, nothing we do will stop them." The matriarch's enormous fins sliced through the dunes, throwing plumes of sand into the air like ocean spray. The smaller hunters fell back, circling wider, leaving the center open for her approach. Eric's mind raced. If the desert chooses, can we make it choose her instead of us? Lyra's eyes snapped to him. For a moment she looked as if she might argue, then she nodded slowly. "Yes, but it will demand more than water this time." "What more?" Eric pressed. She met his gaze. "Blood." The matriarch was almost on them now, the ground shaking so hard Eric had to brace himself to stay upright. Lyra grabbed the vial from her pouch, the one she had filled with sacred water back at the well, and handed it to him. "Mix it with your blood," she said quickly. "Throw it where the sand is blackest. The desert will take her." Eric pulled out his knife without hesitation. Quick slice across his palm, the sting sharp in the hot air. Blood dripped into the vial. swirling with the shimmering water until it turned a deep crimson. The matriarch reared up, her head towering above them, casting a shadow that blotted out the sun. Her mouth opened, teeth glinting in the fading light. "Now!" Lyra shouted. Eric hurled the vial into a patch of dark sand a few meters away. It shattered on impact, the mixture soaking instantly into the ground. The reaction was immediate. The black sand began to sink, swirling faster and faster. The matriarch's head snapped toward it, as if sensing the irresistible pull. A furious hiss, she dove for the spot. The ground collapsed beneath her massive body, pulling her down in a whirlpool of sand. She thrashed violently, the force of her struggle sending shockwaves through the desert. Smaller hunters scattered, vanishing beneath the dunes. Within seconds, the matriarch was gone. The sand smoothed over, the vibrations faded, and silence returned. Eric fell to his knees, breathing hard. "Tell me, that was all of them." "For now," Lyra said, her voice low. "But the dessert never takes without remembering who fed it." He looked up at her, his chest still heaving. "Meaning what?" She met his eyes. "Meaning it will call for you again." The desert was quiet again, too quiet. No vibrations, no shifting sand, no distant fins cutting across the dunes. But Eric didn't trust the silence. He sat on a flat rock, clutching his bandaged palm. The cut was shallow, but the memory of watching his blood mix with the sacred water still felt heavy in his chest. His skin itched with dried sweat, dust, and the strange heat that hadn't left his body since the first sip from the well. Lyra stood a short distance away, her back to him, scanning the horizon with that same relentless focus she had carried. Since they met, the setting suns painted the dunes in gold and crimson, making the desert look almost peaceful-like. It wasn't hiding monsters beneath the sand. "Is it over?" Eric asked finally. Lyra didn't turn. "For tonight?" "Oh." He frowned. "You keep saying that like there's a tomorrow I shouldn't look forward to." "There is," she said, "but it will not be quiet. The dessert has taken your blood. You are part of it now. It will not let you leave." Eric leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "I didn't exactly sign up for a lifetime membership." She finally faced him, her golden eyes sharp in the fading light. "You survived the well's judgment. You fought the hunters, even made the desert choose you over the matriarch. No outsider has ever done this. Do you think it will just let you go?" He met her gaze. "I think I just want to get off this planet." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You could try, but the desert would follow. The water in you calls to it across sand, across stars. No matter where you go, the hunters will find you." The weight of her words settled like the heat of the suns. Eric thought of the endless dunes, the pits of black sand, the grinding teeth of the creatures below. He had never believed in curses, till now. "So what's my choice then?" he asked. Lyra walked closer, her spear tapping softly against the rock. "You can run. Spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, never staying in one. Play sore." She stopped in front of him. "You can become one of us. A protector of the well." Eric raised an eyebrow. "I thought your people didn't trust outsiders." "They don't," she admitted. "But the well does, and the desert has already claimed you." For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind whispered over the dunes, carrying the dry scent of sand and stone. Finally, Eric stood, dusting off his jacket. "If I stay, what exactly does that mean?" "It means you will guard the water with your life," she said. "You will fight the hunters when they come. You will bleed for the well if the dessert demands it." He gave a small, humorless laugh. "Sounds like a one-way deal." Her expression didn't change. "It is." They began walking toward the canyon where the hidden well lay. The suns had nearly set, and the first stars were appearing in the violet sky. Eric's boots sank into the cooling sand, every step stirring memories of the battles they had fought in just the last 2 days. When they reached the narrow crack in the cliff, Lyra paused and looked at him. "Once we go in, there is no turning back." Eric met her eyes. "We passed that point the moment you yelled at me for wasting water for the first time." She almost smiled. Inside, the blue glow of the moss lit the chamber. The pool shimmered, as if aware of their presence.
"Ow,"
The carvings on the stone walls seemed to shift in the light, the spiral patterns almost breathing. Lyra motioned for him to kneel at the edge. "Place your hands in the water." Eric hesitated. "And if I don't, then you are nothing," she said simply. "The desert will eat you piece by piece until there's nothing left. Not much of a choice." Eric knelt, unwrapping the bandage from his palm. The cut had already closed, but the skin was still stained with a faint shimmer from the blood-water mixture. Slowly, he lowered his hands into the pool. The water was cool. At first, soothing against his skin. Then it shifted, growing warmer, pulsing like a living thing. A strange hum filled his ears, low and constant, and the world around him faded. He saw flashes, the endless dunes from above. The great hunters, swimming through the sand, the black pits that swallowed them whole, and deep below it all, rivers of glowing water flowing like veins through the planet's heart. A voice not spoken, but felt murmured in the back of his mind. "You are mine now." His breath caught, but he didn't pull away. The warmth in his chest spread to his limbs, sensation both terrifying and strangely comforting. When he finally lifted his hands, droplets clung to his skin longer than normal water should. They sparkled faintly in the blue light before vanishing into his flesh. "It is done," Lyra said quietly. Eric looked at her. "I'm one of you now." She nodded once. "The well will call you when the desert stirs. And when that day comes, you must answer." He stared into the shimmering pool, thinking of the blood, the battles, and the endless horizon outside. He wasn't sure if he had just gained a purpose, or a prison. As they left the chamber, the night air was cooler, almost pleasant. Stars burned bright above, and for the first time, Eric wondered how many of them the desert had touched before. Lyra walked beside him in silence. When they reached the canyon's edge, she stopped and looked out over the dunes. "Every drop of water is life here," she said softly. "And now, every drop of your blood belongs to it." Eric glanced at her, then back at the vast, quiet desert. "Then I guess I'd better make sure I don't waste the last drop." Somewhere far off, a faint vibration stirred in the sand, so faint he might have imagined it. But deep down, he knew he hadn't. The desert was listening, and it would always be.